Welcome to Leadership Trademarked, the podcast where we explore what it truly means to lead in today's uncertain world. Built on decades of experience across industries, we go beyond theory to examine the real tools, challenges, and outcomes that define leadership today. In Season 1, we laid the foundation, bringing together voices from across sectors to uncover the core principles of effective leadership. Now in Season 2, we turn our attention to the existential challenges organizations face: uncertainty, rapid technology changes, and shifting generational expectations. We kick off the season with founding members Leslie Riley and Rosalind Kingsmill, sharing over 80 years of senior leadership experience, and myself, Sylvia Fraser, a leader driving inclusion and innovation in municipal government and public service. Supporting us behind the scenes is Finley Gain, whose tech expertise ensures our conversations reach you smoothly and professionally. So join us as we unpack real-world leadership with insight, purpose, and actionable strategies, helping you define and refine your own leadership trademark.
So, John, welcome.
Thanks.
Dr. John Flannery, a terrific person, a fantastic doctor. And welcome back to Season 2 of Leadership Trademark. And the focus is about engagement with your followers, your colleagues, and the people above you. And the purpose of engagement is to generate a rapport with the individual or individuals so that they feel hope and trust and compassion and certainty. John, you and I have talked a lot over many hours about different things. And it seems that in a state of change, we'll call it that, or uncertainty, the whole idea of being in control of something, being able to take charge of it, becomes a big pot of conversation that can generate a whole lot of chaos. So what we want to focus on is when change is happening, when uncertainty abounds, we would like to think that each one of us can just stop, breathe in, breathe out, and think through what we can control and what we can't control, and then the actions we will take about what we can control and the actions we will take about what we can't control. So there we go. Be delightful if you wanted to start us off with a story or an event where you had to face that kind of uncertainty or not. And with that, over to you, John, and to Leslie and Finley. Welcome.
Thanks, Rod. It's a pleasure to be back, and it's a pleasure to speak about some of these leadership issues, which have, as you've mentioned, have become really quite prescient at the present time because of the uncertainty. So it's absolutely critical to have an approach, and that approach that you described has been very helpful for me over the years, whether it be in care that I provide one-to-one with a patient, or with the team that I lead around how to manage the care that we provide for the patient or the group of patients that we see. My focus has been in chronic pain for the last 10 years, which is in and of itself a very difficult area to manage, as well as motivate and engage the individuals who would want to participate in chronic disease management. That chronic pain is probably the prototype, if you will, for chronic disease management at large, because it affects so many people, as many as 1 in 5 Ontarians or Canadians or North Americans or pretty much everybody in the Western world experience chronic pain to about 20% of the population at any one point in time. So, and the duration can be, year or can be decades. So you can imagine trying to function in that environment, either as an individual or as someone to try to provide the care for that, or as leadership out of a hospital or a region or a province or a country. It is very challenging for sure. And engagement is critical to that whole component of people understanding and wanting to dive in and work hard in that area. So I think your description of the control component, I think, is really important. And again, that's how I approach each and every day when I wake up, and each and every patient that I see, or each and every other meeting that I'm leading.
That's really very interesting, Dr. John. I'm glad to hear you say that, because we're all so aware of all the uncertainty and the stress that's coming down around us, and really now, across our borders and around the world, sometimes it's hard to know which of these stressors to focus on for the day. What we're trying to do here, and I'm glad that you're here tonight, because I know that you have used something called control and not control to help people focus on actionable things when the world around them starts to get a bit crazy. And you've done that with patients and probably people that report to you, as well as yourself. Can you take us through an exercise where you start to help yourself or help somebody else break down what in their world they can control and what they can't control?
Excellent question, Leslie. And I usually go back to just the basics of what are the goals that either we as a team or the individual patient, what they would want, because then I know where their focus is, what is most important to them, and that's essentially what goals are, and how is the barriers that are impeding you from achieving the goals, what are they? And each and every one of those instances, is it under your control or is it not? And if it's not, then putting time and energy into that may not be all that useful, but at least the awareness that that's one of the aspects that you need to look at. And there can still be strategies on something that's not under your control that you can take actions towards. I mean, that's quite evident. And things that are under your control, making them aware and realizing that that's the case. So in a team environment, we might, when I'm putting my leadership hat on, hearing everybody give their opinions, because we might have blind spots or not be aware of some of the things that appear to be out of our control. There might be some degree of control, or the reverse, that we think we can control this, but in reality we can't. So that group collective and that group opinion is important for us to hear it out, because we have lots of power in the collective and in a group. And if we don't make the environment engaged or safe, they're not going to voice their thoughts. And that diminishes their ability for us to lead, because we want a rich pool of information so that we can gather it all and make sure that those steps towards things that are either under our control or not under our control are clear to each and every person. And if it goes up one level, when you've done that process and now you're presenting it to people that are in the decision making that might rise above you in the organization, that allows them to know that you did a fruitful, thoughtful, engaged, safe process to make sure that people could give all that they understand in this information. Understanding their actions is another excellent method, because that then puts ownership on them to want to take step towards this. They come to the realization that this little step that they may be able to take will help in the greater achievement of the group. So it engages them and empowers them to feel connected with the issue that we're talking about, and therefore you've got them wanting to do more and participate more.
So, by assessing things that are within our control and not within our control, you're helping to engage people and also to instill in them a sense of empowerment and control over their own lives, which can do a lot to bring down the temperature in an environment of uncertainty.
Absolutely. I think that that little check-in, I use it personally just to sort of make sure that I know what I can do and what I can't do. I think people then get to see it's modeled. They get to watch and realize that that's something that I fundamentally do, and that I'm asking them to try and follow that same approach, which makes them, again, feel safe, heard. And once you get that, out comes a ton of ideas. In fact, sometimes you almost have to put the brakes on because you've got too much information. But then, clearly the engagement's up, the input's up, and now we can take this rich environment and then, assess it, rank it, put it on a priority. And once you have those, set priorities, you can either chunk them up to a point where you can have, a clear number of limited goals that are achievable. There might be other things that down the road, but we've agreed as an entity that these are our top 3 or maybe 4 things that we can focus on. And those other things are still important, but maybe not a priority right now, or may need to have some time before they become more of a priority based on the collective group's assessment and thought.
That's really interesting, making that connection between figuring out what you can control and taking it all the way through to establishing multiple goals and being able to prioritize them. That sounds a bit like an action plan.
That's hopefully you get to that point at the end. I mean, otherwise you walk away from that meeting being dejected, and your energy to bringing it into the next time, you're not going to be as effective because people will already come in with a degree of skepticism, which is ripe in our society right now. Dejectedness that is, again, ripe in our society right now. So you don't want to add to this by being ineffective or, a waste of time for individuals. Once you finally engage them, there has to be action steps. They have to see the deliverables, and that time frame. They may want it yesterday. Everybody wants it yesterday, but we might realistically need to have some appropriate targets so that you can reconvene and sort of say, yes, we've achieved this, but we still need some more input in this one. It was tougher. We didn't anticipate that there would be that much resistance to this organizational change.
So while we're talking about this tool in a leadership context, it's also a tool that can be applied in one's personal life. And I'm curious because you're speaking about you work with groups with chronic pain. And chronic pain seems like a particularly relevant condition when speaking about things that you can control, things you can't control, and how to cope with the things you can't control. And I'm curious what lessons you've learned about how to apply this tool from these individuals that you've been working with over your career.
Thanks, Finn. That's another really interesting question and sort of nice segue into the fact that, one, again, if it's on the individual or the group level, whether you're in the, them exploring what they need to do or us exploring what we need to do to support these individuals, both have a lot of parallels. And when you get this information, they can now understand, and reflect back if they feel they're capable of managing it. So there might be a need to probe, to ask questions, be curious, so that you can understand how they're thinking about it. Because if you don't understand what their perspective is, you can make some huge assumptions, and you don't want to jump ahead with this. And they may be so overwhelmed because of this present state of our society that they can't see what might be under their control, and they might mislabel things that are under their control or not under their control. And so by simply asking, ensuring, by getting them to take the action steps, they can, one, articulate it and believe in it, or, be challenged by others within the group to sort of say, well, I think I would be a little bit different when I look at how what you just said, so that that group consensus can feel real and can, be constructive, or also be critical and take away some ideas that, may have been tried by experience and not effective, so that you can use that years of experience that people have, as well as their own personal experience. So again, for me, it just keeps flipping from an individual to a system, back and forth, and people can kind of be made aware of that aspect by just, the curiosity and asking them, how would that actually function? Have you seen it? Give me an example. And when they do, then other people realize that they have put thought into this, and they themselves feel like they've been heard and their point of view is valued.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Dr. John, for people listening today who've never really taken this approach and they say, oh, this is really interesting, I'm going to start trying this. What would you suggest they do, like maybe something they can do tomorrow or this week to start to put this kind of a process or framework into play?
So again, if we're talking in a group process, one, having clear, timeline put out for how long this process we think is going to go. We'll be thinking about 3 months, or are we talking about 5 years? That way they have context that they can understand how big we're thinking or how small that we're thinking. So I think that's always an important aspect. But once they've got that, then you would, literally have a little 2x2 table that has control, not control, action plans down underneath, and get people to list this off. And when you create a nice open environment, you can just have people spitball or throw out ideas, and you just write it down. And there are no bad suggestions. There are no superstar suggestions. We just put them down, and then we can reflect back and sort of see, is there consensus around this? And what are the action items that might be effective for that component, even though it's not in our control? What are some steps that we might need to do? So, for instance, if someone wants to change a medication that they're on, they might feel like they can't afford those other things. So that's not something that they can control. But there might be lots of opportunity for us to engage the government to pay for these things, because there are steps that we can take to enable the coverage of this in certain circumstances. So that's what seemed to be out of someone's control from a financial perspective can actually be adjusted from an administrative method. So that gives people some understanding, let's say on something as simple as a medication, whether it's then having enough time for an organization to function together, because we want to have a team, an interprofessional team in our healthcare domain. But these are the same in any other domain, whether it be, administratively looking after a school, whether it's, looking after a company that has to deliver, on equipment or production, whatever the different goal that is trying to be achieved, we just have to get that knowledge base out there and then explore. Is this truly under your control or not? If it's not, are there still some actions that we can take? And so that little simple, 2x2 board can lead to an awful lot of information and exploration of possibilities and probabilities in each individual.
Well, that's really interesting. Thank you for that. Do you ever find in a group situation that one or two people are sort of reluctant to come forward with ideas, and somebody else sort of leading the discussion? And what do you do in a situation like that?
Yeah, that's the cherry on top of the sundae. When you get someone who never speaks up, and sometimes the group very well, and sometimes you don't, but you can quickly get a sense by looking around, and usually after introductions, from my experience, watching and having not only your ears open but your eyes open, because we communicate an awful lot non-verbally. When you can get that person who is usually very quiet to finally say something, it shows to the group that you got the inherent introvert in our group to say something. It usually means something, and they're usually very, very spot on from my experience. And the reason they may not speak up is because they just don't feel safe or valued. And when you can get that, it sends a message to everybody else, all the extroverts on the team, of which I certainly fall into that category. But it allows them to see that there's importance, there's significance from these people. They have ideas that are really worthwhile. So to me, when you get that person who never speaks to speak up, it's honey.
So can you tell us about an incident in your past or in your first leadership role where you faced a challenge and how you would handle it differently now, or what you learned from it maybe is a better way to ask that.
Yeah, so thanks, Leslie. Very interesting question. So lots of ideas come to mind from past experience around this. Yeah, and if more than anything, it's probably collectively, it seems to have been that failure to flush out adequately all of the points of view early on that allows us to maybe be too narrow in the scope or the understanding. And then the resistance shows up later as a result, because not everybody voiced their concerns. There's a conversation that happens after the meeting that's probably more important than the original conversation that we were having, because that inability to get everybody to say what they really felt and us be able to listen to that leads to further issues downstream, because that lack of engagement or that inability for everybody to feel as if they've had their chance to voice this, those have usually been the issues. A check-in at the next meeting to sort of follow up on what we achieved or the actions that were supposed to be done. If they haven't been done, those usually are the early telltale signs of some of that limitation. So, and there's no one in particular. There seems to be a theme, and that usually is that we just didn't get all of the information out in the first meeting, especially some of the barriers that would have been there or the actions that cannot be taken. And so we might have things that are in the, yeah, we can do that domain, when actually people really believe that it's not under their control and we've mislabeled it.
Thank you for the thoughtful answers to my questions, Dr. John. I always enjoy talking to you because it makes me realize that regardless if it's a medical environment or a business environment or your next door neighbor, we're all just a bunch of people trying to figure out where we fit in. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Leslie. You're welcome.
Before we wrap up this episode, I recognize that not just one leader here, but 3 leaders have used and applied this tool in their professional careers. And the question that I would like to ask is going to be answered by each of you. And the question is, if you had 1 minute to not just convince, but to speak to the impact that this tool has had in your career, either through allowing you to cope more effectively with the things that you can't control, or being able to actually set clearer goals and move towards outcomes.
As a leader for many years, because of the way I'm made, I always had a vision about what was possible. And once I got that in my head, I could put together a strategy to get there. However, I had to depend on the teams around me or the people in my support system to do those things. Some of them I didn't even know how to do myself. So I thought very carefully about my vision, my responsibility, my accountability. And I knew those were inside my control because those were my commitments. And I knew that I'm a person that says what I mean and means what I say and does what I say I'm going to do. So when I was dealing with team issues or big projects, to John's point, I would ask questions. But I would always start with these people who by then I knew something about by saying, I want you all to know that I am counting on you and I need to count on you. I also want you to know that you're here because I believe you have the ability to respond to what's coming, which, by the way, I can't tell you because I don't know. And number 3, a rule in this team is you have to tell me the truth. You have to put your ideas out because we can't achieve this if we don't achieve this. If there's 40 of us on the team and 38 people are in and 2 aren't, those 2 that aren't are going to be running these side meetings at the coolers and in the bathrooms. And I found that it always worked. I would be as transparent as I could about the goals. I would also be transparent about the strategy that I was not able always to share. In other words, it was above my pay grade. But I was also, once I got them together and trusting each other, I would share strategic things from 1 or 2 levels up on the understanding that they shut up about it. They be aware of it because it's an impact on people's individual roles about what they can and can't control. And everybody's so flipped out about not knowing what's coming next. So my longtime colleague and working friend and business partner and all the other things she is taught me about this tool, I don't know, 40 years ago. And when I'd get into a jam, I thought, that's the way to do it. And it always worked. So that's my experience. Over to you, Leslie.
Maybe Dr. John should go.
For sure. I think when you understand the collective goal or the individual goal, then you can sort of, see what steps are necessary. So the simplicity of control, not control, and action steps, it's just that. Because it's so simple, it allows people to put things into very big buckets. It's a yes, I can do this, or no, I can't. But even if you can't, there's still steps that you can take, that you can advocate, that you can move these issues up and engage other individuals that it may be under their control. And so that's the collaboration that becomes quite clear, that you may not have all the individuals at the table that are necessary because 3 or 4 of these important steps are not under your control, but are still very important to the ultimate goal, the high-level purpose that we're trying to achieve. And without that ability to have all those engaged individuals at the table, we are not going to be successful. But we would not have known that until we put into the bucket what's under our control and what's not. And then the action might just be more meeting, because we need those other people there who do have this under their control, and they have to know how we need to have them engaged and participating in this for the collective purpose, which is what usually the organization is after. So it's really just stepping up and identifying the highest level purpose to achieve what is there and what may not be, that we still have under our control, but just not with the right people.
That's amazing. And Leslie, is there anything that you would add on to that?
Well, I was going to say, John really summed it up, because I think of it as calm and focus from chaos. So by taking things, sorting things out by what you can control and what you can't control. And you mentioned it earlier, John, when you said from that comes goals. So, you've got what you can control. You can set up some goals around this. It creates focus and which is really good when everything is very chaotic and uncertain around you. To have focus, to have a purpose is really important for people. And from that, measures of success. And there's nothing that feeds a feeling of well-being and control like knowing that you have some kind of success, and you can show it to yourself and to your colleagues and to your bosses and to your spouses and to your kids and all of that. So that's what I think of it. I think of it as calm and focus from chaos.
Wonderfully said. That's a wrap. Thank you